Welcome to The Explainer. We are jumping right into the content today because we're tackling a seriously fascinating topic. Look, in the world of cannabis cultivation, myths spread like wildfire. Sometimes they come from old school inherited experience, sometimes from really clever marketing, and sometimes it's just from a grower seeing a specific result literally one time and cementing it as an absolute rule forever. So today, our mission is to break down part 2 of the most common cannabis growing myths. And hey, we're not here to shame anyone's techniques. Instead, we're going to separate cultivation tradition from actual plant biology and use the science to really empower your grow. Okay, let's dive into this. The most dangerous myths in absolutely any field aren't the ones that are completely, undeniably wrong. No, the most dangerous myths are the ones that are actually half true. They're built on this tiny kernel of truth, which is exactly what makes them so incredibly convincing. Because when a myth contains just a sliver of fact, it's really easy to follow it right off a cliff. Section 1. Feeding, light, and environment. Fueling the plant.
So, do more nutrients always mean bigger plants? Be honest with me here. How many times have you looked at a plant and thought, man, if I just feed it a little bit more, it's going to absolutely explode with growth? It's this massive grower instinct to just panic feed plants, hoping for bigger, heavier yields. We kind of think of nutrients like steroids, right? More input just naturally equals more output.
Well, actually, no. The grower myth assumes there's this direct pipeline from the nutrient bottle straight to bud size. But plant science tells us a completely different story. Metabolism dictates nutrient uptake. Cannabis plants absolutely do not grow better just because you use the nutrient bottle more aggressively. They grow better when nutrients are available in the correct concentration at the correct time. If you just dump excess nutrients into the medium, you're actually causing salt stress, essentially choking the plant with too much of a good thing. That overloads the root zone, damages the root function, drops water uptake, and burns your leaf tips. If your light intensity, your CO2, and your environment aren't supporting a fast metabolism, all that extra fertilizer is just going to slow your growth down. The plant needs the right amount of food, not the most food possible. And that brings us perfectly to the next massive panic inducer: yellow leaves. The instant a grower sees yellow, the reflex is almost always, oh no, it needs nitrogen. But let's run through a mental checklist first, because yellowing leaves can happen for so many reasons. It could just be natural senescence, which is totally normal late in the flowering phase. It could be nutrient lockout, a pH imbalance, or an issue with your EC, electrical conductivity, meaning there's way too much salt buildup in the medium. It could literally even be pest pressure. So before you instinctively reach for the nitrogen, pause and ask yourself, where exactly is the yellowing? Is it on the old growth or the new growth? How are the roots actually looking? Are you maybe just killing your plants with kindness by overwatering them? So the absolutely crucial point here is this: a yellow leaf is a symptom. It's not a diagnosis. If you just assume it's a nitrogen deficiency and start dumping nitrogen into your medium, especially late in flower, you're highly likely going to create an entirely new set of problems instead of actually solving the original one. Now, let's talk about the artificial sun we provide indoors. There's this huge myth that light intensity is the only thing that matters. Everyone wants the highest wattage, the highest ppfd, just the sheer volume of usable light hitting the plant. But blasting the canopy is not the same thing as efficient usage. Light quality isn't just raw power. Cannabis responds to spectrum, to canopy penetration, and to the balance between the light and the environment. If your light intensity is off the charts, but you don't have enough CO2, nutrition, or temperature control to match it, the plant literally can't use that light. It just becomes stressed out. The best growers out there don't ask, how strong is my light? They ask, how efficiently is my crop actually using this light? Moving right along to section 2, stress, size, and color, visual misconceptions. We all absolutely love the look of those massive, oversized flowers. But the myth that bigger buds always mean better quality is just that. It's a myth. In fact, extremely large, dense flowers can be a huge liability in your grow. They hold moisture, they reduce airflow, and they dramatically increase the risk of botrytis, which we commonly know as bud rot. True quality isn't just raw weight on a scale. True quality is chemistry, its structure, aroma, and cleanliness. A massive bud that's poorly dried or contaminated is completely worthless compared to a smaller, perfectly healthy, mature flower. And hey, speaking of visual appeal, we've got to talk about purple cannabis. Consumers see purple and they automatically think, oh, high potency. But let's look at the actual science here. Purple coloration is usually linked to anthocyanins. These are simply plant pigments. They're influenced by genetics, temperature drops, and stress. The color itself is absolutely not proof of strength. A bright green cultivar can easily be twice as strong as a dark purple one. Purple is just a visual trait, potency is a strict chemical measurement. Which actually leads us to one of the most dangerous myths of all. The idea that stressing your plant always increases THC. Now, remember what we said earlier about the worst myths having a kernel of truth? It is true that controlled stress can influence secondary metabolite production. But there is a massive, massive difference between careless plant torture and controlled crop steering. Severe stress reduces photosynthesis, damages your roots, lowers your overall yield, and can even cause hermaphrodism. The goal isn't to torture the plant. The goal is to guide it. Stress is only a useful tool when it's measured, timed, and deeply understood. You don't want to kill your plants with kindness, for sure, but you certainly don't want to just abuse them either. Next up, the great debate of the cannabis industry. Section 3, genetics, seeds versus clones. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is how we view perfection. There's a huge myth that clones are invincible, just perfect copies every single time. They aren't. While they are amazing for replication and uniformity, their performance can vary wildly based on the age of the mother plant, environmental factors, and epigenetic changes. Plus, if a mother plant has a pathogen or a viroid, clones are going to spread that disease rapidly through an entire facility. On the flip side, there's this myth that seeds are just too unpredictable for serious growers. But look at the incredible strength seeds bring to the table. They create entirely new genetic potential. Seed populations do show variation, yes, but that variation is exactly what allows for selection and breeding. It's a powerful tool, not a weakness. I want to take a second to really emphasize this concept. Clones are for replication. Seeds are for evolution. You literally cannot build a strong, serious, long-lasting cannabis industry without both of these methods. You absolutely need clones to stabilize and produce, but you desperately need seeds to discover, adapt, and evolve. All right, let's transition to the absolute climax of the plant's life cycle. Section 4, timing the perfect harvest. I want you to ask yourself a serious question. When you buy seeds and the package clearly says 8 weeks flowering time, do you just blindly chop at day 56? Come on, you know better than that. Relying purely on breeder timelines is a massive mistake. That 8 weeks is merely an estimate. It entirely fails to account for the unique environment of your specific room, your lighting, your plant's overall health, and the specific phenotype you're actually growing. Instead of staring at a calendar, you need to be looking at actual biological markers. This is your action plan right here. Grab a loop and check your trichome development. Monitor the flower maturity, the pistil changes, and the actual resin production on the bud. Observe the aroma shifting in your room. Because if you harvest too early just because a package told you to, you are significantly reducing your potency and aroma. And if you harvest too late, you're actively altering the cannabinoid profile and completely changing the final effect of the product. This is the golden rule you really need to walk away with today. The calendar is a guide. The plant is the evidence. The optimal window to chop your crop is never, ever going to be found printed on a piece of cardboard packaging. It's found by paying close attention and observing what the plant is actually telling you. Let's bring this entire explainer together. Section 5, the cultivation half-truths. The goal here isn't to just completely reject all old-school grower knowledge. A lot of it was hard-earned. The goal is to manage it using 3 critical steps. Test the knowledge, refine the method, and connect it directly to plant science. When you hear a new rule, test it against what you already know about biology. The best growers in the world aren't the ones who blindly believe every single myth passed down on a forum. The best growers are the ones who constantly ask better questions. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. In cannabis cultivation, science does not kill the magic. It explains why the magic works. When you truly understand the biology, the chemistry, and the environment, you aren't removing the art of growing, you are mastering it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing smarter.